Welcome back to the Battery Podcast. I'm Aiden,
And I'm Jack.
and we are very excited to be joined by another member of the Cannons 2011 championship winning team, face-off specialist Chris Eck. So Chris, like Jordan, another lifelong Cannon, his whole career, came in and obviously a pivotal part of that 2011 team. Um, Along with I think a kind of a formative player for both of us, someone we saw on TV and in person quite a lot of times growing up. Um, yeah, I think we'll just get into it.
Yeah, let's just give it over to him.
All
That's what the
right, here's our
people want to
conversation.
hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's our conversation with Chris Eck. And thank you to Cannon's legend Chris Eck for coming on with us. Cannon's and Colgate legend Chris Eck, I should say. Um, if any of you guys are watching 2011, you saw him win a championship along with Jordan Burke, who we just had on in our most recent episode. I'll say career Cannon from New England as well, and just inducted into Colgate's Athletic Hall of Honor. So, Chris, congratulations on that, and thanks for coming on with us.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for having me and look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's just start maybe at the beginning of your career. What were your thoughts on going pro on the MLL as like a league or an option post college? And then how did you feel about the Cannons and about them picking you up?
Yeah, it was a funny path because I don't mean to tell too long-winded of a story, but I didn't pick up a stick till I was in seventh grade. And I was about as wide as I was tall. I had a sweet middle part, wore Jankos. I might be dating myself for you guys since you're a little younger than me. But like my parents, they will never say it out loud, but I'm pretty sure they were terrified. And then had someone introduce lacrosse to me. And at that time, the pro league didn't exist. So the best outcome you could have is to go play at a place like Princeton and they were the top kind of
Hmm.
team at
Hmm.
the time. So that was always my goal. And then my goal then became playing college, got to Colgate, went through that process. And then I had the opportunity to do a fifth year because I tore my ACL my first day of college, was
Oh,
diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and then broke both my feet. So I had 5 surgeries in 4 years. And
oof. Yeah.
again, continuing the long story medium, my dad was like, I was thinking, do I do a fifth year? My dad was like, you should do it. You should think about it. Like, he played college sports as well. It's like you only have so long to compete at a high level. I was like, okay, like thinking just one more year. And my mom said I'd really like to keep tailgating with Colgate lacrosse parents. So they had the priorities straight to say the least. They were both right. And then I had a really good year that last year and turned my eye to wanting to continue to play. So it's one of those things where I'd say it wasn't always kind of the tip of the spear for me because it didn't exist when I was younger, but eventually it became a dream of mine to play in the then MLL and then for Team USA.
That's awesome. And both of which you accomplished, of course. I'm sure we'll touch on your time with Team USA a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned you're from New England, from Fairfield, right? Connecticut. So I guess New York would have been geographically the closest to you. Did you have like a preference on a place you wanted to go, like stay close to home or just go to, where you could play, like get on the field soonest, or what was your kind of thought process going into the draft?
Honestly, I just wanted to get drafted. I was going to be working in New York City, so I ended up commuting from New York City to Boston to be able to
Hmm.
play. My full-time job in consulting and business development was based in New York City, but I just wanted the opportunity to play. I was like the third backup. I think it was Dave Jenkins was probably retiring soon. Ben DeFelice was the other guy, and we just all kind of battled out in practice a bunch and didn't get any looks until the last game of the season, and where I played Jeff Snyder and I had played against him one other time when he was in college. So I think he was like 3 years older than me, even though we were the same year. Canadians tend to have that
Hmm.
advantage on their side, whether it be hockey or lacrosse. And yeah, kind of played my heart out. Played well. I think I went 62%, which wasn't expected for like an untested rookie to go against one of the top guys in the league. And then kind of the rest was history from there.
Amazing. Yeah. So it was 2008 or 2009.
2008. So I should have graduated 2007, but I ended up working for 6 months in New York City and went back for my fifth year, and then
Hmm.
got drafted in 2008. Played just that last game.
Cool. Cool. And then, you're basically the full-time Fogo at that point and starting in '09. Um, and then, a couple years later, we get to 2011, obviously the season that sticks out the most for Cannons fans. Um, so I guess what was your mentality like going into that year? We heard some of this from Jordan Burke, but like, did you have kind of a special feeling about that team, or just what was the vibes going like into the year, and then obviously like making it to the championship weekend and the championship game? Like, what was that feeling in the locker room?
Yeah, it was an interesting year because in 2009 the league contracted. So it
Right.
went
Hmm.
from 10 teams to 6. And that meant we picked up some like unreal guys from like the Barrage, who are kind of a traveling team, originally Philly. And actually, the Barrage are the first team I ever watched because they played in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is a town over from
Mm.
where I grew
Right.
up in Connecticut. But we picked up like Sweeney, Boyle, a bunch of other guys who were like paramount to our long term success. So I'd
Absolutely.
say like in some ways it was, at least 2009, it was nerve wracking because, right, anytime there's a contraction, more talent comes in. And I, of course, wanted to play, but I also wanted to win. So it was like excited and nervous at the same time. And then that next year, I think we really kind of hit our stride because we made some good drafts, Jordan being one of those guys. As well as started to kind of come together as a team in a more consistent manner because there wasn't these shakeups.
Mm.
And I just think we really put it all together. At least for me, I had just come off of 2009. I was considered the most improved player, or I got that award, which I think means they thought I was going to suck, and I did okay um, that year. And then in 2011, right? Yeah, it was a wild season, and we got a lot of press from inside lacrosse, in particular, like Rabel, Posque was on the crease, Sweeney on the wing,
Yeah.
feeding everyone.
Yeah.
And then I'll still never forget, we were the only professional sports league that played that weekend because I think it was Hurricane Irene. So
Yeah.
I always like to
Right.
say we competed against the Hurricane and the Toronto Nationals or Hamilton Nationals, whichever one they were at the time, to win that championship. But it was like an absolute downpour, at least on that Saturday game. And then Sunday, there was no power in the surrounding area, but luckily the game was at the Naval Academy, so they have backup power for obvious reasons. And we were able to win.
Wow, I did not know that
That,
story about the power. I mean, that image of Max Quinzani scoring that goal in the rain as time expired, like through several puddles, is locked in my brain forever. But I mean, I knew the weather was good the next day. I mean, thank goodness it was matinee too. But yeah,
hmm
to play in kind of that vacuum, just another, I mean, another amazing story to tell from what I'm sure was a great memory
Yeah,
for you and the
it
rest of
was nuts. We ended up going. Kip Turner was one of the goalies at the time. His family's from Annapolis, so his family ended up hosting us afterward. And I'm pretty sure they had a really hard time getting the beers cold because
the.
there was no power. So they're doing their best in every way possible to allow us to kind of hang out in their backyard and have a good time. And I'll never forget, I ended up having to take an Amtrak Monday morning the next day back. It got canceled like 3 times because it was completely flooded. So my
Ah,
boss at NBC at the time was like, "Oh, okay, you just won a championship and you can't come in." I'm like, "No, seriously, like I can't." So I ended up taking a taxi all the way back from Annapolis to New York City, split amongst 4 people, and
oh,
threw my stuff into my apartment in New York, and actually decided like the week before that I was going to get my MBA, and went to my first GMAT class that Monday after I gotten back. So it was a whirlwind of a weekend or a couple days for me between athletics,
Oh
work.
my God, yeah. Now,
that is
do you remember
chaos.
how many digits was that cab fare?
I think we split it 4 ways. So I think it was 125 each, which is like roughly an Amtrak ticket
Yeah.
each
That's
person.
actually, I really thought it was going to be in the thousands. That is quite a
That's
jump for that cab driver to take.
Yeah, I mean, he walks home with $600 and
Yeah,
he's pretty,
absolutely.
I
even if,
suppose so.
yeah, he just coasts home. It's no, not the end of the world.
No, I guess not.
Yeah. Talking about that weekend though, what was the preparation like going into it and sort of, especially, the back-to-back days and just got to be, taking face-offs is really a grind on the body. So what was that like for you just preparing for those games, big championship games, and both mentally and physically?
Yeah, I found, and I think that kind of unlocked that year for me. I found almost the more like relaxed and chill I was, the better I played. And it took me some time to figure that out. Like, I'll probably shouldn't say this out loud on a recorded line that might get posted, but like I threw up before every game in college. I was like straight out of Friday Night Lights. Like I would get so anxious and crazy about it. And then like when I got to the pros, like I got nervous before games that I eventually figured out like you treat this like a Tuesday, you're going to play a lot better because you train so hard, you put in the work. It's just a matter of executing now. And frankly, I'm trying to implement that in my day-to-day life at work now at Google, to how I coach kids today, to even playing golf now that that's all I can, that's the only stick I can swing around really. But the week or two leading up to it truly is about rest and recovery. You've done all the training, right? If like I've heard of people like hiring personal trainers the week before. It's like if anything, you're like getting yourself more tired as opposed to less. Like right before a moment where you need to tap on all your resources. So it was a lot of like rest, recovering. We do a lot of the strength coach I work with was the same guy who Sweeney worked with, who actually introduced me to him, a guy named Jason out of the sports lab in New York. We do like a lot of neurological work. So that just means like do cleans, but not heavy weights. So you're firing the body and getting the nervous system reaction as opposed to just muscle fatigue, as well as massages, Normatec, ice baths, everything else that you could think of. And then, before and after the game, same thing, good nutrition. Like as someone who's type 1 diabetic, I had to really figure out how to dial in like what I was eating, when I was eating, how I was eating, to manage my blood sugar, but also to just feel good. We all stayed in the same hotel. So it was, I think everyone was trying to drain the ice machine, fill up the bathtubs and get in those the night before the second game. It's never an easy turnaround. It's cool that the PLL has been able to space it out a little bit. But we all had to make changes and sacrifices given the moment in time we play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, because the PLL did have their homecoming weekends with teams playing 2 games in 2 days. I think we heard from some of the players there that they were definitely looking at ice baths, and I think cryogenics was mentioned, cryo
Yeah.
at some point. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's an extreme. I mean, just honestly, it gives you even more like respect for like the NBA and NHL and
Sure.
MLB as well. Guys who are playing back-to-back days and um, very
It's
Yeah.
a grind.
yeah.
I truly don't know how they do it. Like for 2014 USA's, and I'm sure we'll get there at some point. Like Greg and I shared a room, and I ended up somehow off the chance meeting someone who knew the founder of Normatec. This is not meant to be an ad for them, but legitimately bought one. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made because I had never played that much consistent lacrosse in my or since I graduated college. Other than that, it was like strength training. Yeah, we'd have practice Friday and Saturday before game Saturday night, but never at the intensity of the World Games. So just rest and recovery is just going to be so important. I can't tell you how many hotel rooms or other places I would sit upside down with both my feet on the wall too, to just try to drain the blood out of them. So
Yeah,
did that quite a bit throughout my career.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, Jack, you have something or
No, I was just gonna say, like, you bring it up. What was that experience like at the Worlds getting to represent your country? You talked already that growing up you didn't really even see the MLL or professional lacrosse as a goal. So I imagine getting to wear USA across your chest is something that probably also wouldn't have crossed your mind. So what was that like when you actually got to do that?
Yeah, it was a weird combination in the fact that I actually saw World Lacrosse before I saw professional lacrosse because they had actually hosted the games around eighth grade, I think it was, down in Baltimore at Hopkins. This is like Mark Millen like era. I still have his jersey with him signed on it, probably back at my mom's place in Connecticut these days. But that was always like a weird, subtle goal for me, but didn't really maybe draw the line between college, pro, and USA's because those guys were playing like for like local club teams or ALL, I think it was called at the
Mm.
but I'll always say USA across my chest is still one of my proudest moments. I still have some of the stuff from 11 years ago. I think my wife would like me to get rid of it or put it in the garage, but I still wear it here and there to bed. And when I actually got cut from the 2010 team. I was one of the last two guys who they were looking at. It was between me and Alex Smith, and they decided they were just going to take one face-off guy. I wore those practice shorts for 4 years straight. Don't worry, I washed them before I got to the USA 14 tryouts. I'll still never forget doing like a story about that in Inside Lacrosse. And people were definitely concerned about the stink of them, but they brought me and helped me achieve a dream, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So you had, I guess, from '08 to was 14 was the last game you played, in Boston that whole time. You know, don't feel like you need to gas us up too much, but what was it that kept you in Boston with the Cannons for your whole career?
I think it was a combination of things. I mean, I think Boston sports fans are some of the best fans there are. Like, full stop. Like, I
Correct.
don't think there's any arguing with that. And I think with the amount of hate you guys get with certain teams and the amount of love you get from your athletes, that just goes to show. That was part of it. And I also think I was in a unique position that, I had some success. I think it was always top one or two faceoff guys in the league. And it probably didn't make sense for them or for me to look for outside of Boston.
Mm.
It was like, it just ended up being a home for me. Anytime someone tells me they're from Boston, I was like, there's nothing better than, May to August in Boston. There's literally nothing better, especially down near Harvard Stadium. And still tell people to this day that Harvard Stadium, I think, is one of the coolest stadiums there is. And that's like,
Yeah.
it's like gladiators with those kind of stair step,
Right.
but with like astroturf, good lighting. It just has this weird kind of modern, but kind of, gladiator level kind of feeling to it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
really special.
yeah. How about the ball busters though?
The
You
best.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
Ugh.
I don't know if you guys
Ugh.
might want to think about a name change back to it, or maybe they had
Ugh.
licensing agreement or something of
I
that
don't
sort.
know. We tried to find them as we were
Yeah.
starting our stuff up in the spring. I think all we could find was a Facebook group from like 8 years ago. But
2013, something
yeah,
like that. They
They're the best. I think
they
they
yeah,
all would have Ballbuster on their
yeah.
jersey
yeah.
year they
Custom
joined,
ordered.
if I remember correctly. But they were hilarious. They would sit right behind the other team's bench and just rip into them. The amount of times they started donate your paycheck chance was, more than I could count on one hand.
That's a
They were,
good chant.
Yeah,
yeah, they would
we'll
call
file that one
people,
away.
yeah,
Yeah.
donate your
I
paycheck.
like that.
They call people bag of milk, which I don't know if that one ever rung true. If you're kind of like fat in the middle, you look like a
Okay.
bag
You're
of
a
milk.
bag of milk.
We heard that chirp quite a few times. I think it's a Canadian chirp that they might have adopted just in
Oh,
Canada. I think
okay.
milk
Oh,
and
yeah, I think they sell milk in bags in Canada, which
yeah,
seems
like in like
Okay.
wrong.
a wine bottle or a wine bag.
Yeah.
Um, Most of the other things they used to say, I don't think I can say out loud, but it was always
No.
fun because right, you go work your ass off, win a face off, and you're trying to rest and recover on the sideline, and all I'm really trying to do is catch my breath and listen to what funny stuff they had to say.
Yeah. Um, so obviously face-off guy was your Fogo, as it were, was your position on there, which as we talked a little bit before we started recording, it's a really unique one among lacrosse. I mean, goalie is probably the best comp for other sports, but it's a very individualistic position where like you could have a good day and the team could still lose. You could have a bad day, the team could still win. How did you get started like facing off, and what was your kind of I don't know. I mean, hopefully you liked it, but just what was that journey that brought you to facing off, and how did you kind of think about that as, a very individual part of a big team game? Like, where'd you go in the huddle during timeouts?
Yeah, I'll try to see if I can answer those different questions. But I lacrosse, I think I told you guys, started in sixth or seventh grade in Fairfield, Connecticut, which I know sounds crazy now, given like I think that's one of the best venues that people go to now, or at least that's what people talk about in the PLL. But a guy named Jamie Monroe, who people probably remember being the Denver coach, and a guy named Andy Towers, who you guys know very well, I'm sure, is the Chaos coach. They were coaches at Yale, and this guy named Kim Bechtold, Jim Burns, and Neil Hauk decided to start lacrosse in my town. Kim was from Long Island, was like, how do you guys not have this game here? And then what they did is they hired Jamie and Andy to come do like fall ball sessions for like this town that, I think we had like 50 guys sign up for it in totality. And part of what Andy did was teach us how to face off. And I think he taught us like the three basic moves. I was the only one who didn't do a clamp because I knew, right, it was essentially a rock, paper, scissors. And I ended up beating a lot of people. I'm deeply and fiercely competitive. I also think at my width and height stage of my life, I was able to actually be successful without necessarily having to run by guys. I think I was fast and quick, but I didn't have kind of the wind that maybe some of my other counterparts did. And that's how it all started. At that time, I actually, I tried out later that spring. I got cut. I ended up being on the B team, where all my friends were on the A team. I still distinctly remember not hearing my name and going over to the A team because I thought that's where I belonged, or at least that's where I must have belonged because that's where my friends were, and was told that I belonged on the other side of the field. And it was like this weird best thing that ever happened to me, in the sense that I like played from day one. I was able to play offense, defense, face off. I actually developed. I wasn't just like chilling on the sideline the entire time. And yeah, I have Andy to thank. I've thanked him profusely as I was inducted into the Hall of Fame throughout my career. I always had conversations with him. He was the guy I called before I retired to figure out if it was time for me to retire. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. In high school, again, my public high school was not a, it was existed maybe 2 years before I got there. So I was fortunate enough to be able to play all those positions again throughout my career. And I think it really helped me, one, play and support the team in kind of all aspects of winning ground balls to putting balls in the back of the net. To part of the reason I loved it so much is I like the both mental, physical aspect of it. I always like to say it's like playing rock, paper, scissors, poker, and like kind of maybe nose guard's the wrong term, but the guy in the middle of the scrum in rugby. I don't know what that actual position's name is.
Yeah.
Basically, my job was to squat another human being off of me, where there's deception, there's nuance, there's strength, there's power, there's the ability to create quick offense, which I always enjoyed. I mean, any face-off guy likes that as well. But I will say, I think the reason I found success is I was able to work with my team as a unit. We get the percentage next to our name, but I can't tell you how many times like Sweeney, Smalley, Brody, Matt, Casey, even teammates in college like Will Planner and EJ Tamian, like they saved my ass on more than one occasion. And a lot of what they were doing is communicating to me where there was space, and I was trying to put the ball for them or for me, so that we could ultimately win the game. And then the last thing I'll say, and then I think you mentioned about winning my game, my battle versus the other team. I think there was this interesting podcast about like why nose guards are paid so much. I don't know if you guys, or not nose guards, long snappers are paid so much in the NFL by Freakonomics. And it's about the fact that by not having a good one, that is the real risk, right? Like, do they create massive plays that other players may make who are wide receivers, et cetera? No. But the downside of not having a great one is so high or so significant that they need to invest in those type of people, even though they have a very, very unique and specific skill set. And at least I think for me is that I knew that if I was doing my job and winning, I was putting my team in the best position to win the game. And I don't think that's true in every position, right? You might have a defenseman who just shuts down a guy, but if they're not playing good team defense and someone else scores 8 goals, their success didn't necessarily lead to the team's success. Same thing with, someone might take 100 shots and score 10 points, but we might have been better off if we distributed the ball a little bit more. So no disrespect to the other positions that I needed those guys to put the ball in the back of the net and stop the ball. But I felt that like my success was highly aligned, even though it could have gone kind of other ways, just like, some other positions too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think we definitely saw that kind of the couple of years that the Cannons really didn't have a face-off guy in the PLL. Where, I mean, we certainly saw them get exposed by the Water Dogs a couple of years ago in that game. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, he's not, number one in the face-off, in any of the categories. Zach Tucci has been a big asset for the Cannons this past year. I mean, obviously, you talked about creating instant offense. I don't know if you saw that first game against the Water Dogs. But I don't know. Do you ever have a game where you scored multiple goals? Or I guess you wouldn't have had a 2-pointer in college, but
yeah, I don't know if I had multiple goals in any games. I'm sure I had 1 or 2 games where I had more than 1 goal, but like I'll never forget. I had someone who didn't know the game very well. They're like, "So your job's to like get in the middle of the field and stick your butt in the air?" I'm like, "There's a little bit more going on than that." Of course, I want to score. Of course, I want to help put points on the board. But like ultimately, I know like, hey, who's on this team who's really good at putting the ball in the back of the net? I'm going to pass it to Paul and let him get some shot or put it away for us. Though I will, I think the most memorable goal I'll ever have was off a face off. I actually like quick pass it to Boyle across the field, and he just gave it right back to me with like no time left in a quarter. I like could barely catch it one-handed out here and stuck it on Queener, I think it was. And it was like I had no business catching that pass. He just zipped it right across, no time left. And I'll still never forget like Boyle coming up and be like, I had no idea you could catch the ball. I'm like, fuck off, man. But still was able to score.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
We're not catching the ball. We're good at the back of our stick and getting it to the proper people.
Yeah. I miss when a face-off guy would run down with the ball on the wrong side of his stick and shoot. That is when,
I hate that, but it's okay.
Oh, well, I'm sure it doesn't feel good when it's in your stick, but as a spectator, there's just the beautiful chaos of watching that happen where it's like the ultimate, like I'm shooting and no one knows, including me, where this is going. Yeah, that was a real sad day for me when I think college and the pros both said you were not allowed to catch the ball on the wrong side of your stick.
I think it just got abused, right? People were using too pinched of a stick and it wasn't coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I think the more they can make people look, I think specialization is a good thing, right? You're not asking like Patrick Mahomes to go play cornerback, right?
Yeah.
You have specialization in sports for a reason. I think, certain specialization gets hammered in different sports. But I think the more you can make it as close to the rest of the game, the better. I don't mean to veer off topic, but I was always a stand-up neutral guy. I always had my hands like this. I never went to motor grip or knee down. And I like that they've changed the rules back because I think it makes a lot more clean. Like no one wants to see people like, spinning in circles for 30 seconds. Like that's not fun for anyone, including face-off guys. Like I think that's half the reason I don't have any cartilage in my left knee anymore. But yeah, I love seeing how the game has evolved and what Paul and others have done with kind of the position. Same with the NCAA.
Yeah. Now about the no long pole rule, which we saw in the PLO this year, did you ever have did you ever go against the pole consistently or that? I mean, obviously we saw that Costabile goal with the 2010 college championship, and then we saw, to great success, some teams used it in the PLO last year. Was that something that you had consistently faced against when you were at any level?
I wouldn't say the same consistency as what you saw in the PLL the year they brought the shot clock down to 32 seconds. But I definitely have polls thrown at me many a times. I think, everyone from like Hartzell to Brody to quite a few others. I think I get the intent of the rule. For me, and it's not meant to be feedback on rules or anything like that. I would just love like the more simplification, the better. I think, right, to be a fan of lacrosse, you kind of have to play it. And then I think the more simple you can make it, the better. So having multiple different types of shot clocks, I think makes it challenging for someone just to like, oh, this is interesting. I can like digest it. So, and I also think like you're a lacrosse player, bud, you better be able to get away from a pole. So I think it's kind of, for me, I would love to see just maybe the shot clock start the second the whistle blows so that demotivates guys from grinding for too long. And the longer they grind, even if they win, they actually have that disadvantage. Because I think sometimes it can be a bit rushed and then there's rules on rules on rules. Like it's like, let the boys play, same shot clock, 54 is already pretty darn short. And if you actually started it as opposed to on a possession versus when the game or when the whistle was blown, I think they would get the same outcome that they were looking for. Whether it be against the pole or not against the pole. Yeah,
that's a great idea. That
I like that.
Yeah, well, we're definitely sending this to the Ravels once they finish uploading it.
Text Paul after this. I don't know if Paul and Mike want to hear it right now. They need their vacation. They need their rest time. I think they're on their week off or something like that right now.
Yeah, true.
Or we'll give them till I don't know, November maybe, and then we'll start having them.
Look, I'm all for what they're doing. I absolutely love. I saw Paul not too long ago. He was out in the Bay Area. Where I live these days. Not meant to be criticism. For me, the more we can simplify the game, I think the more people it opens the game up to. Right? Yeah. Football is a complex game, but we all get it. Hey, that guy runs into that guy, and that guy's trying to score over there. Everything else is nuanced, but that's just where I'm coming from.
I think where the rules that we saw in 2024 are probably not going to be the rules that the PLO will wind up sticking with when hopefully this is a firmly established league 50 years from now. I think there's still a lot of tweaks we'll find, and can't wait to see what they are, and hopefully, hopefully we all get
going to evolve. Every game evolves, right? It's a living, breathing organism, right? The NFL is changing the rules all the time too. So as long as pace of play and everything else and safety, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and one of my
Exactly.
favorite examples is the NHL adding the trapezoid behind the goal, basically just because of Marty Brodeur and how good he was at handling the puck.
For
So
sure.
I feel like
True.
we maybe are getting some of the Baptiste effect on the face-off, but I don't
Hmm.
know, he's not going to play forever.
He's good, to say the
He
Yeah.
least.
is good.
When you see someone like him, or I mean, I say Nardella is just about in that same tier as him. Like obviously you can appreciate how good they are, but do you like what kind of stuff do you see about someone like the two of them that make them such elite players? Like how, I guess I'm just asking on how much of a deeper level do you appreciate how good they are than people like myself or Jack who do not face off at, with any consistency?
I think you see that in all sports, right? It's like I forget what the NFL show is, but they have like the pancake section, right? Because like three of their guys are former like linemen, offensive linemen.
Mm.
You see Quint when he's on TV, he's always talking about goalie nuances because he was a goalie. So
Yeah.
I think you always have a deeper level of appreciation for a position if you've played it. And I think like I'm kind of on the spot right here. If I were to break it down, I think they're experts in the moves that they throw, right? They're incredible athletes. They're not just good face-off guys, and they strength train and condition and do everything that they need. They're great at, I think, not beating their head against the wall. I always say this to my guys, like when I coach out here, as a thinking face-off guy, as a slow face-off guy. But that's true for like all sports, right? If you had to
Yeah.
think about like, okay, drop step now, like you're done, right? Same with golf swings, right? If you're thinking like, oh, I got to do this at this time, it's going to be very robotic. So they're very good at like abandoning maybe their first move when they know that's not working, and moving to counters really quickly. And then the last thing is, I'd say in particular for Trevor that I'm so impressed by is that, and I think indoors helped him a lot with this too. He was always good with the ball in the front of his stick, but he's a real asset out there on the field. He's not a liability. He knows how to work with wing guys. No one's scared to pass the ball to him or let him, let it fly. Didn't he score like 3 points in 4 seconds this year too?
Yeah, he had a one and then immediately he won the next face off and got a two. I think he has three or four career 2-point goals.
Yeah, which is
Wow.
fucking awesome. He's a great athlete and a great player, and I think he's another person who picked up lacrosse later and
Hmm.
fell in love with the craft. And I think that's the fortunate part of the game is that it's built for athletes, and if you love the game, you're willing to put the work in, you can find a way onto the field. Um, Look at the different size and shapes, right? Some of the best players in the world, Mikey Powell, not the biggest guy in the world, and Paul, right? He's a freaking statue. And then now it's right, you get the Sours and others, right? It just continues to oscillate because there's such variety
Hmm.
and ability to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you take Michael Sowers, Blaze Reed, and Romar Dennis. Like they're all some of the best people in the world at their sport, at their position. But look very, very different.
Very.
Yeah.
Extremely.
Yeah.
You know,
Um,
I
yeah, go ahead.
want to talk to Chris just a little bit about you mentioned, your relationship with Paul. You guys both were rookies in '08. Did you know him before the draft or kind of what was that like sort of coming in? I mean, he was obviously number one pick, big name in college, and he's turned into, such a big name in the sport. What was it kind of like coming in to the league with him, and what is your relationship like with him now?
Yeah, I'd say so him like there were multiple guys drafted that year. We were the only two who I think stayed on the roster after they decided to make cuts.
Hmm.
I mean, truthfully, I was kind of like coming for where I came from, playing for Colgate. At the time we did win a Patriot League championship, but by no means were we a consistent powerhouse like Hop was. I didn't
Hmm.
know any of them. I didn't know Dino. I didn't know, Sanoski. I didn't know Paul. I didn't know any Pizer, any of these other guys. I was just frankly happy to be there.
Yeah.
I was excited to be there. And I learned a lot from him on day one. And the fact that I think one thing Paul is just absolutely incredible at is he is an entrepreneur. He has a bias for action, and he's an incredible marketer. I think he may have shared this story before, but I think he had one of the first ever like Facebook fan pages. Like he turned his personal account to a fan account. Like one of the first ever athletes, and like he didn't wait for someone in the NFL to do it. He was one who did it, and I think for me, I quickly learned like the importance of kind of branding and marketing yourself, not only on the field, but also like within the traditional work world to I started X Factor Lacrosse. I now work with Greg with Face Off Academy. X Factor is a play on my last name. Actually, Carcaterra called me the X Factor at the Face Off X. And, just by being in and around kind of him, or being like in the locker room with him and around him, I was able to just learn so much. So yeah, Paul's an incredible guy. He's someone who I stay in contact with here and there. I'd say by no means I would say we're super close. But needless to say, he's a busy guy trying to stand up a league. And I wrote him this the other day, but I think, right, he's giving people like I always say, lacrosse gave me purpose. It gave me opportunity. It gave me a network of friends and that I would have never had otherwise. And he's doing that at a whole nother scale, right? He's giving like economic opportunity, and he's giving people purpose, kids to adults, to, whether it be the investors, to the players, to the DMs of the league, et cetera. So I'm always impressed with what he's doing and excited to see where he continues to take the league.
Do you have any, I guess this is kind of two separate things that we want to ask, but is how in touch do you stay with guys from your playing days, I guess specifically that 11 championship team? And then, do you have any other kind of affiliation or relationship with the PLL? Like, have you been to any of the weekends, or I don't think we've seen you in the booth, but like, yeah, basically just have you been in touch and gone to any of the PLL events?
Yeah, I'd say it's like, right, the further you get from something, it's harder and harder to stay connected, especially, right, I have two boys now, a 3.5 and a 1.5-year-old. They both have sticks day one. I wanted to continue that Native American tradition of giving a kid a stick when they're born. Regardless if they play or not, I think I'm grateful for the gift it gave me, and I'll expose them to it. If they want to play, they play. If they don't, they don't. So stay in contact, but it's largely like random texts here and there. Hey man, thought about you, birthdays. You see something, a post, you see something going on with someone's kids, like Sweeney, or reached out to a couple different guys recently with the Colgate Hall of Honor. They were all part of my journey, and I wanted to make sure I thanked them appropriately. As for the PLL, I watch every single game, largely on tape delay when I work out at 6 a.m. in the morning in my garage gym. Just put it on. It's a great way for me to like I said before we talked, right, the older I get, the better I was. I just want to kind of relive those glory days. I went to a game, I think in the first season of the league out in Red Bull Arena in New York when I was still living there.
Oh, cool.
I would love to get to a game if they do something out here. I know I was invited to come to Gillette when they had the most recent game, but it was tough for me to get across country for something like that. But always down to be a part of this league. I'm on the high performance committee for Team USA, and then I'm also on the board of the Haudenosaunee National Development Group. Long and short for Team USA, it's basically helping them think through how do they work with our top performing teams, indoor, outdoor, et cetera, meaning largely the senior teams, the team I played on. And then the Haudenosaunee National Development Group is essentially the nonprofit arm of the Haudenosaunee, where we try to do fundraising, merch development. We're trying to align kind of the importance of academics and athletics and kind of the opportunities it can provide you, and work closely with them there. So long and short, I try to stay as involved as I can in lacrosse, both on a national and a local level. Also work with a group called Oakland Lacrosse out here, and love trying to give back and coach there too.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What is the lacrosse scene like out in the Bay? I mean, I assume it's not quite as rabid as it is here in the Northeast, but you mentioned starting a business, and presumably that's going well enough to keep it running. So are we going to see any PLL players from San Francisco in the near future?
I'd like to think so. No, I'd say when they went back to stand up neutral, I hit up Greg when we were, because we were roommates. We were fierce competitors, but I think we'd like to always say we made each other better during our time together. I was like, hey man, like I kind of know a little bit about this. Like, you got anyone out in the Bay Area? He's like, nope. Like, let's partner up. So started working with him with Face Off Academy. So most of the time I spend in coaching is either working directly with kids in kind of a bi-weekly open session that I do. Actually had a guy come down from Tahoe, have had people come from Reno, as well as kind of the surrounding Bay Area. And it's continuing to grow. Helped a lot of kids, think about going to the next level. Guys at Brown, guys at Colgate, guys at a plethora of different D3 and D1 schools. But I'd say the two big programs, as far as I understand, are Advanced, which is run by Chris Rotelli, a former MLL and like Tewaaraton winner, UVA guy, as well as Johnny Christmas, who runs the Alcatraz Outlaws. but also partner up with them. So like this weekend, I'm going down to one of the advanced like training camps, for lack of other words, and supporting their entire club program, kind of let's call it from the middle school to the high school area. So as far as the scene, I'd say that the major difference is club is crucially important. I mentioned club just now. I'd say the difference is that it's still a growing sport. So it's not like I can only imagine, right? If you go to Long Island or certain suburbs in Boston, like all the kids are meeting in the backyard and playing just, on a Tuesday. Where here it tends to be pretty organized and distributed because players are coming from all different towns to come together and play. They don't have the same level of like rec, like in Darien, Connecticut, where a couple of my buddies live now, or New Canaan. Like, it's a part of the ethos of the town. Where I'd love to become more part of the ethos of towns here. But I think it'll continue to do that. It feels a lot like how it was in Connecticut when I was growing up.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I know the PLO's made a good deal of the players from Oregon. I think Dordovic and Zapatello, a couple others. So hopefully that trickles down to California as well, and then hopefully the Redwoods as well. That name kind of lends its identity a little bit more to the Bay than to San Diego. So every other sport pretty much
high
has.
school in my town is called Redwood High School. So
Yeah.
Maybe look it out here soon.
Yeah, I certainly would love. I mean, every other league has multiple teams in California. I don't know why lacrosse would be any different.
Yeah. Bring back the Dragons.
Yeah.
I actually, I was texting with Greg the other day. I went to a Niners game and I worked down in Mountain View, which is about an hour and a half from where I live. So I got a hotel so I could stay there, and it ended up being the same hotel that the Dragons used to stay in.
Wow.
He was just like, if those walls could talk. I was like, all right.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. That's funny.
Yeah.
But hey, do you have any other questions?
I mean, we could just have some more fun type questions. So, like, who are some of the best guys you played against, or who is the guy that you hated facing off against the most? Where you're like, oh, damn it, we got to play that team this week. Like, I know it's a small league, but was there anyone in your, I guess, 6 or so year career that was like anyone but him?
Yeah, it's like love and hate can kind of be the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say the type of player I disliked going against were just like back when I played, they allowed like moto grip and guys would put their elbows on the plastic of the stick and they would allow for that. So it just ended up being like who could lay on the ball the longest.
Oh.
And I was stand up neutral, so I didn't really have that advantage. And I was like, wait, why can we touch the plastic of our stick now and every other aspect of the game we can't? So there was a period of time where just some like massive dudes would kind of lay on the ball, and those were just a grind to go after because it was 30, 40 seconds of me just trying to squat them off of me. And, I think I was, 215 at the time, and some of them were like 270. I'm like, well, this is just not a fair fight. And then love, like I'd say, iron sharpens iron. Like Greg and I had a lot of battles. He's an incredible player. Early in my career, it was a guy like Alex Smith and I battled a bunch, but again, good friends. He actually was the one who kind of inspired me to start X Factor Lacrosse because he was doing coaching down in the Baltimore area. Jeff, Snyder, Team Canada was always a good rivalry and always a good game, no matter what. When we played against each other, and there are always a ton of great competition when you get to such a small subset of people. But I'd say those are the guys who I loved and hated going against because, again, they were the ones who got me up and got me motivated, got me working hard. But if you're talking truly hated it, I never enjoyed kind of seeing who could lay on the ball the longest.
Yeah, that's got to sound like, 30
I
seconds.
can't believe that was ever legal.
I know. You're like, man, maybe I should have played attack. Like, don't have
to I was very tired after those games. Because, like it's a full on go for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, or however long it would take. And it was exhausting back in the day. But yeah, they've changed it. And, I think that's a big reason why they got rid of moto grip is because it got too hard to police. Like, is the guy's hand on his plastic? Is it not? Like, which one is it? And it can be hard to see, did I, by punching my left hand, push their, the plastic into their elbow, or was it their elbow? And it's like, guys, like, back to what we were talking about before, the less subjectivity the refs have, I think the easier and better it is for them, for the game, and for the players. Like you see in the NFL, right? They used to allow guys to be like, oh, would he have landed in bounds if he hadn't been hit by the cornerback? You know what I'm talking about? They used to allow guys where they would, oh, he would have caught it. It's like, why the hell did we ever have that call? Like, just
Yeah,
call
that's ridiculous.
it, because it just turns into, at least for them, like, millions and $1 billion of impact from a call one way or the other.
Right.
Flip side of that is if you had to like you got to go out, I don't know, the aliens want to play lacrosse, you need to win one face off. Who's your all-time duo of guys you want on the wings?
Oh, I mentioned before, Smalley on my short stick. I always loved lefties on my wing because, like, if the guys line up against you here, you can actually hook them with this side to keep them away from you, and then go one-handed this way, and you had it fully protected. And then Sweeney was just an animal. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met off the field and on the field, and he like truly understood what I was trying to do, and would create space, communicate where there was openings, etc. Like, those guys were just hauling ass in, doing everything they could to set me up and set themselves up for success. And both of them had the ability to run the floor. So not only would I want them to win the ball, but I think we could turn into quick offense as well.
Yeah, I think those two, you're good likelihood you're going to score, whether it's one of the two of them or passing it down to Boyle or
I mean,
Posker.
how many times Sweeney went to X and came back around and dunked it? Like, yeah, he was like a shorty out there. And I mean, I think that's a lot of his growth and development to the NLL as well, playing indoor, which is great.
Yeah, definitely. And then, finally, maybe we can wrap up here. You mentioned, yeah, you were coached by one of the more colorful personalities in lacrosse as a youngster. You got any good Coach Towers stories for us that, maybe are podcast appropriate?
I don't think I have anything great to share in the sense that, like, right, I met him when he was, in his, let's call it early 20s, and I was in 7th grade. So there was a little bit of separation between us. As I've gotten older, I've heard some great stories about him. I know he fires guys up. I see him on the sideline. I would, run through a wall to play for him. I unfortunately never got to play for him. But I do remember he's an ultimate competitor. I'll never forget, he was the coach at Fairfield U eventually after being at Yale. And he was the one that I would tell other coaches to call about me. And they'd always be like, wait, you want me to call Towers at Fairfield U about you who are interested in playing at, like, Colgate, for example? I was like, yeah, is that weird? But to me, that's just an ultimate test of character. He knew that I had aspirations to leave my hometown and look at other academic institutions, in particular in the Patriot League and Ivy League. And he was willing to kind of put his neck out for me. So I'm forever grateful for him to kind of teach me everything he did. And I know he continues to kind of coach not only the PLL, but also in other ways. And he's developed a lot of great players. And I know, he taught Jeff Snyder just about everything he knew too. I think we can both attribute our success back to, those early moments that we had with Andy.
Wow.
I know that probably wasn't the story you're looking for, but
no, I mean,
fire guys up. That's one of the best things about him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does fire you up just in a different way. I mean, it's to hear about the like just the integrity and great role models that some of the guys in lacrosse. I mean, we've talked to Coach Holman from the Cannons a couple of times, and he's again just such a the person you want to be like. And so to hear that about Coach Towers as well. Obviously we're not the biggest fans of the chaos at the moment, but we have nothing but respect for him over there on that sideline.
Exactly. That's the most important thing. You gotta have respect and understand, right? Back to what we were talking about, love, hate. It's like you got to love to hate and hate to love at the same time. That usually is how you get better at whatever you're trying to do.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll just about wrap it up here. Thank you so much. Is there anything, you mentioned X Factor and Face Off Academy. Is there anything formal you want to promote? And, we'll get any links you want to put them down in the description for this as well.
No, nothing necessarily. I'm, just doing my thing. I think the only thing that's probably worth promoting in the lacrosse world is, I started working with the Face Off Academy, and, our small group is the FOA NorCal out here, and always looking to, again, continue to support and help guys as they kind of look to grow and hopefully find purpose and opportunity like I did through this sport, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be directly through the sport. It can be about all the great things that happen around it. And appreciate you guys having me. Let me ramble and kind of relive some of the glory days. And I look forward to seeing this come out, and look forward to seeing you guys on the sideline next year.
Oh, absolutely. And, hopefully we get to see you on the sideline someday that, I don't know, business trip lines up with the PLO weekend, and, we get to see you put on the jersey one more time and, be on the other sideline with us.
Yeah, I'll be more. My son already has an Eck jersey that my father-in-law got him, so maybe I'll have
that's awesome.
class and do the same myself.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Just before we got one more thing. Where's your championship ring?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it's in my closet. See it every day. So it's Colgate ring when we won the Patriot Championship, MLL 2011 ring, and then I just got a ring for getting inducted in the Hall of Honor. So I got all three of those. See it every single day when I get ready for the day.
What a great way to
That's
fire yourself up for
awesome.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I'm probably not going to wear it to work anytime soon. Not a lot of occasions that people want to see a championship ring like that, but brings me a lot of joy, and I'll put it on every so often when I'm walking around the house.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is
All right.
cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much for spending this time and letting us relive the glory days as well. Because, season didn't end how we wanted it to, but 2011 sure did. And especially makes me remember the Bruins won the Stanley Cup that summer as well. So, um, great time all around for us in Boston. And yeah, like I said, thank you very much. And hopefully we get to see you out there in person or on TV somewhere at a PLL event.
Great. Thanks, Jackson.
All
Thanks,
right.
Aiden.
Thank you. What a great conversation with Chris. Um, that was a lot of fun just hearing from him. It's been really cool talking to these guys, him and Jordan
Yeah.
both just getting to relive these 2011 championship days and just sort of hear about what it was like being in the league
Yeah.
back at that point that, obviously the PLL and professional lacrosse it is not where we want it to be yet, obviously, but just it seems like so so in some ways it's similar that, you're coming into town on the weekend and just getting a couple practices, but it also in other ways it's just so different
Yeah.
in
The
in different
professionalism.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the wages have gone up, which is great. The
Hmm.
exposure way more, like guys from coming from a lot more of the country. Like it really didn't even feel like we had that many Canadians in the MLL days. And
Right.
maybe that's not true, but just kind of my impression. Um, and then yeah, I feel like it really feels more like a professional sport now. Um,
Right.
guys are really treating it and taking it with that seriousness. Not that they didn't take it seriously, like Chris talked about, how seriously he took his job and how he likes being a face-up guy because he was so competitive.
Hmm.
Um, but I just feel like across the board, kind of the standard has been raised, um,
Right.
which is great. And
Well, and also just the history of the sport that professional lacrosse has been around long enough. Like we talked with Jeff Trainer and we haven't had Tucci on the pod yet, but we talked to them at homecoming. They talk about going to Cannons games as a kid and dreaming of being out on the field. And Verdaro talked about how he grew up a Lizards fan. And Chris Eck is like, yeah, I guess I wanted to go to Princeton,
yeah,
but like the fact that professional lacrosse and it like that just wasn't on their radars as kids for to have something to aspire to. Kids always you want to be a pro athlete. Like you
yeah,
you dream of playing for us. You dream of playing for the Pats, the Sox, the Bs, the Cs, and now we have a whole generation of kids that grow up playing lacrosse and can dream of playing for the Cannons. And so it's kind of wild to think about, some of those guys who we looked up to when we were kids that you forget that they didn't have that when they
yeah,
were kids, that they were that first sort of wave, really.
yeah. And I think that like just the fact that it exists at all, and especially now that it's more easily findable on, and part of that's just technology, right? Like streaming services are so much easier now. Uh,
Hmm.
but just the fact that it exists, that there is a
Yeah.
professional league that kids can aspire to play in and can go see, um, makes you like just helps in general and growing love for the sport.
Hmm.
And talking about getting players to full-time salaries is like, the more eyeballs can be on that sport is, the easier it'll be to do that. And just, thanks to Chris and Jordan and obviously Paul Rabel and everyone else to
Yeah.
who's working like who busted their ass off as a player and now, as coaches, as executives, etc. Um,
Hmm.
and getting this league to where it is now, and can't wait to see where it's going to go in the future.
Yeah, same. Yeah, definitely helps having the games on ESPN and even ESPN Plus rather than Lax Sports Network.
Yeah,
So, like you talk
no shade
about,
to Black Sports Network, but
I loved Lax Sports Network. Like I thought that was so cool, but that's because I was a lacrosse junkie. Like you talk about wanting to grow the game. You grow the game by putting it in front of people that don't know the game.
yeah,
it, if you're putting all your games on Lax Sports Network, like you're not getting any new fans. Everyone that is on Lax Sports Network already knows about lacrosse.
for sure. Yeah, no one's finding that website by accident.
Uh,
Yeah, and growing the game too in unorthodox parts of the area. We didn't talk about what brought Chris over to California, though it seems like it was his other full-time work for Google.
yeah,
To be growing, to get clinics and club programs over there, is hugely helpful,
mm,
um, to where it's like it's not really a surprise to hear that a player is from X part of the country. Whereas,
right.
obviously I think the NHL is still mostly Canadian. I think it's going to be a long time before we see
There's
less.
a good mixture of like with the American guys though.
Oh yeah, no, it's going down by like a lot.
And the American guys are from more and more states. Like I feel
Yeah.
like it used to always be the three M's, the Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, but like Austin Matthews from Arizona, and I'm drawing a blank right now, but I know that there's like
Oh, what's his name?
random states.
I know there are players from California because I've looked it up and been surprised by it. I just can't think of who it
There's
is.
guys from Florida, there's guys from
Yeah.
Texas, there's guys from the Kachucks are from Missouri.
Yeah, well, it's because
Like,
their dad played for the Blues.
okay, but fair enough. Touche. That good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
But anyway, what I'm trying to say is just that, it'd be a long time before we see most players aren't from, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland.
Maryland.
But they, like I said, they were talking about the league was talking about all the players from Oregon. I think it's growing in Texas. Peyton Rozenka, from San Diego, like carpooled with my girlfriend's family as a kid. Um,
Wild.
I know, yeah, such a we're watching the Cannons game against the Atlas. She's like, wait, Peyton Rozenka? I know him. Uh, it's like a pro lacrosse player from California. Like, I'm not sure if the MLL like ever had one of those. Like someone who actually like grew up, spent their whole childhood there, and then got to go play at I think Syracuse. So, um, yeah, thanks to Chris for doing that work over there, getting some people, and just talking about loving the game and seeing what it can give you. Whether that's becoming a pro or getting to play Division I college, or just like structure and discipline to like learn how to be part of a community and work towards a common goal. Like it doesn't have to be lacrosse, and lacrosse doesn't have to be your biggest passion, but it's a great tool for
Hmm.
for just for growing up and maturing, and we're certainly very grateful for what it's given to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. So again, these outros wind up being longer than we always intend for them to be, but we just love talking about lacrosse, and yeah. Thanks to Chris. Thanks to Jordan. We'll have some more interviews for you coming in a couple weeks. But until then, go Cannons.
Go Cannons. Boom.